I know learning a new application can seem intimidating at first, so here I gathered all of the necessary information that you need to get started making your own beautiful art right away. Throughout this video, I will have text pop-ups if you want to have a deeper understanding of any topic. I have tons of free art tutorials on this channel, and the whole purpose of this channel is to give anybody who is interested in art the tools to become an artist. Let's dive in. Essential workflow and canvas management. To start, you need to first create your canvas. And your gallery view has a plus icon here on the top right hand corner, right here. And by pressing this, you will see all these options for different canvas sizes. But to create a new one, you can press this plus icon right here. In this view, you can set your canvas dimensions. I always recommend that you have your DPI at least 300 dpi, especially if you're working for print. I am going to set this to 5000 pixels by 4000 pixels, and that gives me 89 layers, as you can see here. Procreate has a maximum layer limit, depending on what version of iPad you are using. And that is tied to how much RAM that iPad unit has, not how new it is. So the newest version of iPad doesn't necessarily give you the most amount of layers. So if you're thinking of purchasing an iPad, check what the RAM of that unit is. If you are working for print, you can also go here and change the units from pixels to centimeters or millimeters if you know the exact size of your print. And that way you will have a clean, crisp print. When you're happy with your canvas size, just hit Create here on the top right corner. And now we are in the painting mode. But just one more note about this gallery mode is that if you have too many of these items over here, like I clearly have, you can get rid of these presets by sliding them to the left and then just pressing delete. That way you can clean up your user interface, something that I clearly haven't done in a while. Let's go back into our painting. By the way, in this gallery view, if you want to rotate your canvas, you can do so here. But you can do the same thing inside the painting view as well. And then when you leave the painting, Procreate will remember what orientation that painting was. So you don't need to do any other settings to rotate your canvas. You can just rotate it however you wish. If at any point you want to change those dimensions that you decided in the beginning, you can go into the wrench icon and press crop and resize. And here you can go into settings and input new dimensions that you want for your canvas. You can also just eyeball it and drag one of these handles and change the canvas size to whatever you want. And then just hit done. When you're actively working on a painting, you can also check the information of your canvas by going into Canvas Information and checking the dimensions, the amount of layers that you have, and here in the statistics, you can see the total brushstrokes made. Here, this painting has 9,293 brushstrokes, and it has taken me 7 hours to make. So this is something that you can also use to get better at painting and better at brush economy. Can you do, for example, a painting of a coffee cup in just 100 brushstrokes, 50 brushstrokes, or if you're looking for a challenge, maybe even 30. That's a great way to improve your painting skills. Time-lapse recording. Procreate automatically records your drawing process. In fact, this is how I became an art tuber, and that's why you're watching this video right now. You can replay this time-lapse by going into wrench icon, video, and see time-lapse replay. And here you can see the entire process being played out, and you can fast forward by dragging your finger across the screen to the end. And this is quite a long time-lapse video, but you can also export this time-lapse video by going into the wrench icon, video, and export time-lapse video. And here you can choose that full-length video, or if you're posting for social media, for example, Procreate can condense it into 30 seconds. This is especially handy for short-form video content, and it doesn't take up that much storage space. Procreate has been made from ground up for touch controls. And this honestly is a reason why Procreate specifically might seem difficult at first, but I promise you there's only a few of these, and since you'll be using them all the time, they'll become second nature in no time. But before we go into touch controls, let's cover the real basics first. So this icon on the top right corner right here is where you can choose your brushes. I love my honey brush. I painted tons of paintings with it. And you can choose your brush size from this slider. By sliding it up, you get a bigger brush and a smaller brush. If you want to save your brush size, you can also tap the slider and then hit the plus icon. And that way, whenever you want to return to that size, this way you can keep your brush strokes looking consistent. Or if you're drawing, you can keep your line weight consistent as well. This slider right here is the opacity slider. Honestly, I don't use this that much since all of my brushes have opacity controls in pressure. So when I'm pressing lighter, I just get lighter, less opacity in my brush strokes. And this just saves me a ton of time rather than going into that slider all the time. I don't like messing with tools. I like focusing on painting, and that's why I use this program so much. Now, if I have this mess on my painting and I want to undo what I just made, I just use 2 fingers and tap the screen once. You can keep tapping the screen and then you will keep going back into different undo states. And you can go forwards as well. Just use 3 fingers and tap the screen again and keep tapping. You can also go back multiple times by holding those 2 fingers on the screen, or by holding 3 fingers on the screen to go forward. If you want to go closer and work on details, you can just pinch zoom into your painting, pick a small brush, and then work on your details. If you want to color pick colors on your canvas, just use 1 finger, and this brings up the color picker. Now here is one really easy time-saving tip, because you will be using this color picker all the time. For the duration of this painting, I used color picker thousands and thousands of times. So to save time there, you want to go into wrench icon, preferences here, and then go into gesture controls. And here, you want to go into eyedropper and make sure that the eyedropper controls are set to touch and hold. And here, this is the important part, set delay to 0.12 seconds. This by default in Procreate is way longer, and that will end up wasting you tons of time, and it will just make the painting process seem much more fun and fluid when you don't have to wait for that eyedropper control to trigger. Color picking is something you will be doing all the time, so you'll thank yourself later for having made this change. Procreate UI is very minimalistic, but if you want even more space, especially when you're working on those details, just use 4 fingers and tap the screen. And when you want to bring the UI back, just use 4 fingers again. Quick shape. When you're drawing a line, you can keep holding the pencil in that position, and that way you can control where you want to place that perfect line. Here, when you let go, you will see this icon right here, and by tapping this, you will get control points, so you can adjust the control points. This is especially handy for graphic illustrations, and here is a full tutorial on how you can create one. Quick Shape also recognizes arcs. So when you do an arc, just keep holding the pencil right there, go into controls, and here you can adjust the curvature. You can also do polylines. And circles. Here you get to choose if you want to control it as an ellipse or as a circle. This is handy for those of us who can draw a perfect circle. This circle is on its own layer, and here we can delete this circle by sliding it to the left and finding the delete button. Let's go back. We can also duplicate that same layer the same way by sliding it to the left and hitting duplicate. And now we have another layer that we can move by using the arrow tool and moving it around. You can also copy this entire layer in two other ways. You can swipe down with 3 fingers to access the quick menu, and here you will see an option called copy. I'm just going to press this copy and it's going to go into the clipboard. You can paste clipboard elements from wrench icon and add, and here on the bottom you will see paste. Paste will be grayed out if there's nothing on your clipboard. And here I have just pasted this element. If you want to exit this transform mode without moving it around, you can just press the brush icon and then you can edit your layer by painting on it. There is a third way that you can duplicate any layer. You can press the layer icon itself, and here you will see a copy option. In this same menu, you will see other useful options, such as alpha lock. Alpha lock means that now on this layer where I have just this circle, if I pick a new color, I can only paint on areas where there are marks on this layer. So everything else won't be painted as long as that alpha lock is on. Now if I open the layer menu, I see the alpha lock is on because it has that small tick on it. But you can also disable that alpha lock by using 2 fingers and swiping to the right on that layer. And you can put it on the same way. Another way that you can limit your brushstrokes to the layer underneath is by creating a clipping mask. Now this is done by adding a new layer and pressing that layer and setting it as a clipping mask from here. Let's change this color from color palette to something that is clearly visible to you guys. So now that I am working on this clipping mask, which is almost like a child layer to this parent layer, I can paint on this layer anywhere, and it is only visible where there are pixels on the layer below. But unlike alpha locking, all those brushstrokes that I am making here in the transparent area, they are still there, but they are just not visible because that parent layer is not underneath them. If I move this clipping mask layer, you can see that those brushstrokes that I just made, they are there. I can decide what is visible. Now, for example, if I go into adjustments here and choose Gaussian blur, I can add this kind of smooth gradient to an element. And this is how I do a lot of lighting and shadow effects in all of my paintings. If you want to commit a clipping mask to your main layer or merge any of the layers together, you can just pinch them together like this. I'm gonna pinch these two together as well. And this way you can free up more of that layer space if you're running out of layers, if your canvas is too big. That quick menu that you can access by swiping down with 3 fingers, here is a set of actions that you can use in your workflow. But if there's an action that you often use and you want to set it here, just press on any of the actions and you will get this massive list where you can set an action that would be more useful for you. Let's say, for example, I make new layers all the time, and having that in my quick menu makes sense. So I'm setting that there, and now it's permanently there when I access it again. Selections are an important way to keep your painting edges crisp and clean. You can access selections by pressing this S-looking icon right here, and in freehand mode, you can freely just create your selection and then tap on the screen to confirm it. And here, when I'm paint, I basically have a stencil that restricts all of my brushstrokes into that selected area. If I go away from that selection mode and I want to reactivate it once more, all you have to do is just hold and press that S icon again, and then you get your selection back. Let's say that I want to edit colors on this dude right here, but freehand selecting it would take way too long. So I can do a simple selection by pressing on the layer itself and then pressing select. This selects that layer only. And the cool thing with this is that I can now go into this layer menu and create a new layer, and I will still have that selection active. If I want to save that selection as a usable element, I can also create a layer mask from the layer menu, like so. Now on this layer mask, you will see everything else is black except that white little dot. That white area is showing through what is on this layer. So if I paint on this layer, the only elements that are visible are ones where this layer mask has white areas. Now I can separately edit both of these elements. So if I want to deselect that mask, all I need to do is swipe it to the right like that, and I can select it again the same way. So I'm deselecting the mask, and now I'm adding a blur to this red spot right here. And I can do that from adjustments and adding a Gaussian blur. This is how I do a lot of the effects in my artwork. And if you want to commit your layer mask to your layer, you need to just pinch those two together, and that way the only thing that is on this layer is that red gradient in the exact shape of this dude. And you can isolate a layer by just long pressing this tick mark right here. And this is a great way to clean up your layer if you have kind of missing pieces all over the canvas and you want to just clean up those edges. You can bring back the visibility of other layers the same way, so just long press on this tick. Procreate also has tons of different blend modes, like every other painting and drawing app. You can access those by pressing this letter right here. And here you will see a list of different blend modes. I'm going to set this into overlay and leave it right there. In this same menu that you can access by pressing that letter, you can adjust the opacity of your layer. So this could be an easy way to add a subtle warm glow to this character to bring it out a little bit more in this composition. Customization and fine-tuning. If you want to customize your user interface, you can go into wrench icon and preferences, and here you will see a right-hand interface. I'm gonna set it here, and now that I think about it, I think it's actually better that I have these icons over here so that I don't cover the screen with my hand when I'm changing the brush size. I don't know why I haven't done this sooner. This honey brush that I am using here, you can see that it leaves quite light marks, but when I'm pressing harder, I get to access higher opacity in this exact same brushstroke. When you're working as a professional illustrator, you really spend a ton of time just painting for days and days. And that can cause a lot of wrist pain when you're gripping your pencil really hard, trying to access those high opacity brushstrokes. To remedy this, I cannot recommend highly enough doing this setting. So in the wrench icon, go to Preferences and Pressure and Smoothing. Here you will set a global pressure curve. And the way that I have set this pressure curve, that means that when I press somewhat harder, I get to access that full opacity of these brushstrokes without gripping and pressing the pencil into this glass with all of my strength. Painting can be a lot faster and more fun for me, and it doesn't cause me pain, which is somewhat important, especially if you're getting started doing art. To keep it light, keep the pain out of it, at least for now. Pain comes later. The brushes that I am using are always ones that I have made myself. You can get brushes for painters and best of angrymikko brush collections on my Gumroad page, but I recommend just using the default Procreate brushes as well, because they are just as good and you don't need to buy any brushes to use this program. If you want to change the settings of any brush, you can just tap the brush itself. Here you will see all kinds of settings in different tabs. If you are tweaking your brushes and hitting done, remember that there is no undo for that. So before tweaking any process, I recommend swiping to the left and duplicating that brush. before making any changes. So in case you accidentally ruin it, you will still have that backup from earlier. If you want a detailed explanation on each control, I think the best place to look them up is the official free searchable Procreate manual. However, you don't need to go into these at all. In fact, I recommend not switching process that much at all. Just find one that you like and one that is easy to use, and just keep using that same one. I use almost always only one of my brushes for the whole painting without switching it at all. This was done with only one brush as well, and this was also done on one single layer. So everything that I have told to you about how to use Procreate up to this point, that's all the information that you need on the technical side of Procreate to create something like this. Please don't waste your life switching between brushes. It's not that important. And I sell brushes, so I should be the last person telling you this. So choose one that is easy to use and stick with it to teach the controls into your muscle memory. Because ideally, you should know what the brushstroke is going to look like before you even make it. Smart techniques for better art. Let's explore some clever techniques to elevate your digital paintings. This is Transform tool. And here in Uniform Transform mode, you can scale your element or you can rotate it like this. But in Freeform mode, you can grab the individual corners and scale your elements so that it is aligned to your perspective. If this plane is too rigid for you, I recommend going into Warp mode. And here you can organically transform your layer to match your scene. My favorite thing to do with transform controls is when I'm painting random blobs of color on the painting, like this, I go into adjustments, add a Gaussian blur, and then I slide the pencil to the right to apply the Gaussian blur. And after this, I'm gonna go into transform controls once more, and in warp mode, you can adjust your gradient freely. And this is how I do all of those foggy and misty areas in my paintings. And then I just use the eraser to erase the elements that I don't need. You can see how that adds a lot of separation between the foreground and those background elements. When doing buildings or other geometric elements, you can go into wrench icon, canvas, and set the drawing guide on. And now if you go into edit drawing guide, you can set a perspective mode here by tapping this and then tapping a vanishing point to your scene. You can add one vanishing point, two vanishing points, or even three. Notice that the first two vanishing points automatically define where my horizon line is. If you want to have more space for adding your vanishing points, just pinch zoom so that your entire painting is a tiny thumbnail, and that way you can get as much space as you want for putting the vanishing points so that they are useful for your scene. Now, when you're painting in vanishing point mode, you can go into the layer settings, open the layer menu, and hit drawing assist. This will lock your brushstrokes to those vanishing point lines. So I can freely paint lines that are automatically aligning with my vanishing points. And that makes painting even complicated architecture like this easy, because I just set all of these elements inside simple boxes, and then I work the details within those boxes. If at any point you want to see your painting without these lines, just go into wrench icon, canvas, and just hide the drawing guide. It will still be there when you put it on, but you can hide it or go into the settings and set the opacity low so it doesn't mess with the way that you perceive the colors in your painting. The color palette that you can access by pressing this icon right here, it has different modes as well. You can access color wheel or set values separately for the color that you are tweaking. You can also make a whole palette out of your colors. So you can go into palettes, create a new palette by pressing the plus icon, create a new palette. And this way, when you are working on your palette and you see a color that you want to keep, you can just press any of the empty slots and set it as a swatch for your palette. If you want to remove it, just long press it and then hit delete swatch. You can also move the swatches around. So I do this a lot when I'm organizing my palettes. Remember that you can also get a huge selection of palettes for free that I have made from my Gumroad. I'm gonna put a link in the description, and that also includes a tutorial on how to use colors in your painting. The color that you have chosen can also be dragged on the canvas by grabbing the color swatch and then dropping it on the canvas. Now, obviously, this is not something I want to keep, so I'm swiping it to the left and deleting that layer. As an art teacher, I tried to keep my own opinions to myself in this tutorial, but one thing I'm going to say is that don't overuse this smudge tool. Smudge tool blends different areas together when you scrub it on the screen. This is something that most beginners get really addicted to, and then they regret that those sort of ugly marks are in all of their old paintings. So there is a sensible way to use the smudge brush tool, but just don't overuse it. Instead of smudging, I recommend watching this video on color theory, and that will teach you how to use subject colors and magnets in all of your paintings, and that will give you design intent when you are choosing colors. If you're hitting the layer limit and you don't want to decrease the size of your canvas, you can always go back into the gallery mode, select your painting, and duplicate your piece. Now here in the new duplicate version, you can freely commit the layers into one single group and keep adding new layers, and you will still know that you will have access to all of those elements in the other file, and here you are free to try new and crazy things. This is really the strength of digital painting, so your painting can never just fail. It just means that you haven't worked on it for long enough. So whenever a painting feels like this is in a dead-end situation, just make a duplicate version of that file and try something crazy. I mean, it can't go worse, right? So your job at that point is just to find a new way to get excited about that idea and a way to show that idea to others as well. If you're looking for a more guided experience in painting with me, I just released Paint This, a step-by-step tutorial for Procreate, a landscape with northern lights. And this is a painting project where I am walking through every single step in real time, showing every button press and all of the tools that are being used. And all of those tools are also included in this download. So you can get that also on Gumroad, and then you can paint with me. That entire process is real time, so there are no edits. So the entire process is broken down into 5 separate videos that you can follow along and get that painting done. That's all you need to create art in Procreate. Learning Procreate is easy, but learning art is hard. It's more of a journey of a lifetime, and it's an adventure that I recommend to everybody. So for that reason, I have tons of art tutorials on this channel that will teach you different aspects of painting. Keep practicing, keep experimenting, and most importantly, try to find what is fun about making art for you. Once you find that element, then getting through the hard part of practicing is going to be so much easier and more enjoyable for you. I've been Mikko, you've been you. I'll see you in the next video.